there are three things about that sort of cost of development thing and the risks that it poses. One is, as we all know, when you're making $100 million arena shooter that takes 5 years with folks from X this and X that, the industry is moving under your feet. And now a lot of these studios have found themselves in a position where, so there's that kind of impacting it. Another one that's interesting, if we talk about PlayStation Studios, is that PlayStation Studios, the vast majority of their studios make premium single player experiences. Obviously, they're trying desperately to change this, right? But premium, very high fidelity, very high production value single player experiences. There are some multiplayer ones, but that's generally what they do. And they make the best of them in the world. Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, The Last of Us, Astro Bot even. But now that's still expanding that market, but not at a rate, I would say, that is, it used to be that it was expanding alongside with video games as a medium and as an audience. But now that video games have become so mainstream, it's not expanding that market at the same rate that the actual medium is. And so whilst you can still make a ton of money in those games, and PlayStation will continue to, those budgets can't continue expanding. They need to essentially stop expanding, and they need to know how to continue making video games only for $250 million, and they can't get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So that's the challenge ahead of them. Something very interesting that I think a lot of people aren't talking about right now is folks have spoken about how the Roblox kids have finally escaped the pen, right? They're now in Steam. We see games like Repo and Schedule One and
BattleBit Remastered.
Exactly, BattleBit Remastered, Lethal Company. These games, I come from studio development. I started as a junior writer designer in a studio where we made boxed console and PC product for publishers that went through a TRC process on teams of 50 plus, right? And I grew up, I didn't even have a PC. So I grew up with Nintendos that literally have, you'll remember it, the seal of quality on it, right? So every game that I've made has this concept of quality and it being a box product that you pay for. There's a certain amount of value and production value in it, right? And then also I went through, for you and I, Benjamin, and folks our age, video games for us, what made a video game great was this expansion, not just of gameplay possibilities, but of scope and of production value and visual fidelity and technological improvement. We saw these huge leaps forward in not just how great video games looked with each console generation and within them, from the beginning to the end of a generation, but the scope and the breadth of the experiences that you could have. Now, think about a kid who is, let's say, 20 years old, right? Let's say that kid or adult now, 20 years old, who has a credit card and can buy things on Steam and is making decisions and has purchasing power with them and their friends. Let's say when they started, if you're 20 years old, maybe everyone starts picking their own games independently at around 8 years old, like telling your parents what you want, just starting to pick things on the PC or whatever. When these people were 12 years ago, a lot of those games, like the App Store, was often tearing. Like the App Store was fully matured and already in that downward spiral of having a shit ton of free and paid apps. Things like Roblox and that were around or coming onto the scene. Essentially, but also if you go back, like what was a game that was released in, 12 years ago? What's that, 2013? BioShock was 2007, like Skyrim was 2011. So they had, when they first started picking games, when they were fully online as a 8-year-old child picking their own games, they literally had the entire spectrum of video game opportunities. The indie renaissance was in full swing. They could play bespoke, art-driven, author-led indie games from diverse creators. They could play free bullshit app and mobile and browser games, and they could play the largest quadruple A open world, high fidelity experiences, whether they be single player and they had Call of Duty and all these other major, and only Fortnite was only a few years away, right? So they went, if you think about, it's actually a crazy paradigm to change your thinking from ours, where we associate video games and even the kind of quality, the kind of things that we look for in a video game, or how we pass the value of a video game or its experience, and how that would be different to someone who grew up like that, where to them, and especially at this point in time, the internet is fully matured as well, and all of their friends are online. Every social media app that we know is already out there, and they'll be on them in 5 years' time after they're 8 or whatever. So they're also playing all of these games with their friends. So what are the two things that they value the most? Engagement and social connection. And and you know what? It doesn't matter that God of War looks like the best video game that they've ever seen, because since they were 8, video games have looked photoreal. They don't associate it with improvement or it's not a value metric that they're looking for, really, unless it's a personal interest of theirs.
The thing that came to mind was Nintendo is brilliant, right? Because they sort of saw that. They anticipated that to such a degree. And I think there's something else I want to call out as well. And this speaks to that idea of what is that? But you were talking about Sony. You were saying Sony and PlayStation. Mm-hmm. What do they make? They make these premier high fidelity single player experiences. Yep. And by the way, they're great.
Fantastic.
They're fantastic games.
Yeah.
And now I'm actually curious, what's the average age of the person that plays one? Is it somebody my age? Is someone in their 40s,
Yeah.
But is it,
maybe.
Or where is that? But it could be, yeah. If you lead teams in game or software development and you're tired of wasteful and unreliable estimation, I've built an online course just for you. It's called Advanced Estimation for Game and Software Development, and it's a self-paced course with over 15 hours of content, real-world examples, and tools you can start using right away. Estimation doesn't have to be a morale-draining mess. Planning doesn't have to feel unrealistic and contrived. You can do better, and this course will help. Early access is now open with lifetime access and a big launch discount, but there's limited seats at this price point. Check it out at this URL or in the show notes below.